Sechas Bava Kamma Daf Hey is split evenly in half. The first Amud is the last Amud in the fifth parak of the Masechta, and then the second Amud is the first Amud in the sixth parak of the Masechta. So we'll begin with the Gemara's continuation of its discussion of the Aseres Hadibros and the halachos of Kilayim, and we'll have a bit of a Gadata as relates to that. That'll conclude the parak for us, and then we'll start a kindness which talks about the halachos of proper shmira for various types of mazikim. So let's begin. The Gemara says Rabbi Chanina ben Agil asked Rabbi Chia bar Abba, why in the first set of Aseres Hadibros it does not say the word atoiv, but in the second one it does say the word atoiv. It says the man yitavlach. So he said, until you ask me why, ask me if it says the word atoiv, because I don't know if it says the word atoiv or not. Now the Mefarshim will discuss it's not possible that an Amira didn't know the psukim. So one of the explanations is that he wasn't defined which set of Aseres Hadibros went on which of the luchos, and therefore which could be considered first or second based on the different luchos. But anyway, he said to him, you should go to Rabbi Tanchama bar Chanilai, who was frequent by Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who was a expert in all types of agada. Perhaps he'll have the answer. So he went to him and he asked him, and he said, I didn't hear, but Shmuel bar Nachum, the brother of the mother of Acha bar Rabbi Chanina, said, and some say he was the father of the mother of Rabbi bar Chanina, he said the reason that the first luchos didn't have the word atoiv is because they are eventually going to be broken. Moshe Rabbeinu broke them. So when I asked, therefore, what? So Rashi explains, if you break the luchos that have the word atoiv on it, that would break toiva to Yisrael. Gemara now says a bit of a gadata, some of which we've seen earlier on the word atoiv. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shua says somebody who sees a test in his dream, it is a good sign for him. The reason is because it's the beginning of the word atoiv. So the Gemara says there are other words that start with the test that are not good. Like in Sefer Sheo, we have Vesamti Lamarish Kipoid V'agmi Mayim V'tatesiha B'matate Hashmeid. It will sweep you up with the broom of destruction. And there's lots of tesses there. V'tatise B'matate. So the Gemara says there you have only one test. The word atoiv is only one test. We're talking about someone who saw one test in a dream. Those psukim have two tests in each word. So one says, okay, well, there's a pasuk in Eichel that says tumasel b'shulya. Its defilement was in its edges. B'shuleha. So the Gemara says, okay, we'll revise what Rabbi Yeshua said. He didn't say if you see a test. He said if you see a test and a beis together, then it's a tav. You should expect that that's a good siman. So Gemara says there's a test and beis. It's also a bad nivuah. It says tavu be'eretz shehara. Her gates have sunk into the ground. It starts with a test phase. So it goes back to its original part. It's just a test, and the test is a good siman because the first time a test appears in the Torah is in the word toiv from the beginning of Bereshis until V'yar Elikim Esaor Ki Toiv. You don't have a letter test anywhere else. Says Rishua ben Levi. Furthermore, somebody who sees a eulogy in his dream, he should realize that they had mercy on him from Shemayim, and they redeemed him from being killed, and that's only if the eulogy that he saw was in writing. Okay, now the Gemara goes to the last one in the Mishnah where we had discussed Kilayim. We had said that Kilayim is something that applies to all species, even a bird or a wild animal. So the Gemara quotes Rish Lakish, who says that Rebbe learned here that a chicken, peacock, and a pheasant are three different species, and therefore they collide with each other. You cannot mate them or breed them to each other. The Gemara asks, obviously, they're clearly different species. Why would I think otherwise? So to answer that, the Gemara quotes Rav Chaviva, who says because they live together with each other, and you would have thought that it's one species. Now, says Shmuel, a goose and a wild goose are separate species, and they're kalayim if they breed with each other. On that, Rava bar Rav Hanan asked, what is the reason? If it's because one has a short beak and one has a long beak, that's not enough to separate them as far as being species, because you have you have the Persian camel and the Arabian camel. One has a thick neck and one has a thin neck, and you wouldn't call them different species and say that they can't mate with each other. You would say that it's kilayim. So therefore, Abaye says no, because one has its testicles inside the body and one has it outside the body. That's the two types of goose, the wild one and the regular one. Says Rav Papa, the females also have a sign that they aren't the same species. One gives birth to one egg in a clutch and one has multiple eggs in a clutch. Instead of Rav Yirmiyah and Rish Lakish, somebody who breeds two creatures of the sea, or not fish, but two other sea creatures to each other, he gets malchus because they are kelayim. It violates the Isser kelayim. Says Rav Ava, the name of Ula. Hey, the reason that you know that they are also counted as different kelayim is because it says minehu there, and it says minehu about land animals, and you can learn from one to the other that the Isser kelayim applies. Now, Rechava asked, what about somebody who hitches a goat and a shibuta together? Shibuta is a type of fish which is called the goat of the sea. So if you have the goat of the land and the goat of the sea hitched pulling a wagon, do you say that it is kelayim, or do you say since the goat is not going to go into the sea and the shibut is not going to come on dry land, it's not kelayim and it's not like you did anything, or do you say no, you are? So that's Gemara's question. Gemara asks on that should be like somebody who puts wheat and barley together in his hand and he plants them together, one in Eretz Yisrael, one in Chutz La'aretz. And the Isser Kelayim doesn't apply in Chutz La'aretz, it's only in Eretz Yisrael. So if he plants the wheat in Eretz Yisrael and the barley in Chutz La'aretz, so one, would you say that there's a tzad that there is a chiyuv there that violates the Isser Kelayim? That's the same thing here. You have one in the sea, there's no Isser Kelayim in the sea. So the answer is no, there is an Isser Kelayim in the sea. If you were to drive a ship being pulled by two fish of different species in the sea, there would be an Isser Kelayim, and therefore the fish and the goat are both in a makom chiva, both in a place where Kelayim applies. If you planted one of the grains outside the makom chiv, there's no tzad that would be Kelayim, even though you did it with the same shake of the hand. This concludes the fifth parak of the Masechta, Parak Shoshan Agach. Now we begin the sixth, Parak HaKeines, with a Mishnah that talks about what type of a shmira is proper, who's responsible, and how you evaluate the damage that is caused. So let's begin. Mishnah says if somebody puts a sheep in a pen in an enclosure and he closes it properly, and it still gets out and causes a hezek, he's potter of that because he did a proper shmira, he locked it up properly, and therefore he's an inus. If he did not lock it up properly, that is something which is not proper at all, and it got out, then he's chayiv because he didn't lock it in the proper way. Now, if, however, it came out in a way that it couldn't be prevented, and the Gemara will explain how this line fits in, that is, it broke out at night, or thieves tried to break it out and broke down the fence, and then it escaped and it got out and it caused a damage, then he's potter for that because that's an inus again. Now, if thieves stole it and took it, now the thieves are responsible for anything that happens, and if a damage happens under their watch, they would be responsible, according to the law, to pay for it. Now, if the original owner left it in the sun or in the charge of a cheresh shaitav katan, he is chayiv for any hezek that happens. Even if it was a shmira karoi, the son would put the animal in a very uncomfortable situation, and a regular proper shmira would not be enough because he would go to great lengths to escape. Now, if you give over the animal to the watch of a shepherd, then the shepherd has full responsibility just like the original owner would have. Now, if it falls into the garden and then it eats, so if it fell in and it eats, then it pays for what hana it gets. The owner has to pay for the hana that it gets, not for the damage that we caused. I mean, we don't look at how much damage was caused, we look at how much the goat or the animal got out of it. However, if it went into the garden, normally it didn't fall in, then you pay for the damage, not for the hana. How do you calculate it? How do you calculate the damage? So the Gemara has a few opinions here. The Mishnah has a few opinions. The Mishnah says that the Tana Kamma says you don't evaluate the actual fruit that it ate, because that would be too high of an evaluation. You do is you look at the entire base saw that it was in. How much was it worth before it damaged? How much is it worth after it damaged? And you pay the difference between the two. Reb Shimon says if it was a fully ripened fruit and ready to pick, then has nothing to do with the land. Then you do have to actually pay the value of the fruit itself. Doesn't matter. 1 saw, 2 saw, whatever it is, you need to pay for that. Now we begin the Gemara, which quotes a Brisa, defining what is the proper shmira. We talked about proper shmira. What is that? So the Brisa says proper shmira is defined as locking it with something which will withstand a normal wind, even if a slightly out of the ordinary wind will knock it down. an improper shmira is something which can't even survive a standard wind. So the Gemara assumes that this is what we call a shmira pechusa. This is a minimal type of protection, because if you have a wind which is slightly out of the ordinary, it's going to fall. So the Gemara says, so you see this Mishnah is saying that it's enough to do a shmira pechusa, a minimal protection, even on something which is a muad, because we're talking about a sheep here. Sheep usually eat. What the hezek they do is shein or regel, which is a muad. So for a muad, we're saying that a minimal protection is enough. So who's the one who holds that way? So Gemara says this must be the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara quotes the Mishnah that it's referring to. And there it says that if you tie an animal up with a rope, or you lock the door in front of it properly, which is again what we're referring to as a shmira pechusa, a minimal protection, and it gets out and it causes damage. So according to Rabbi Meir, it doesn't matter if it's a tam or if it's a muad. You need to do more than minimal protection. You have to do greater than that. Rabbi Yehuda said, for a tam you're right, for a tam you're chayiv. For a muad, it's enough to do shmira pechusa. Why? Because the Torah says, you're chayiv if you didn't watch it, but if you did any type of watching at all, that's enough. And therefore this is watch, and therefore special xeris chassav, that a muad is actually your putter with less shmira than a tam. Counterintuitive though that might sound, that's xeris chassav. And the third opinion there in the Mishnah is of Elazar, who says there's no shmira you can do that will pater you. You have to shacht it. It's the only way to get out of it. So the Gemara says, so you see this has to be with Rabbi Yehuda because it's a muad and it says that it's enough for shmira pechusa. Where it says, no, even Rabbi Meir would agree here that this is enough, because we're not talking about a Karen muad. We're talking about shein and regel. Shein and regel requires minimal shmira. The Torah specifically minimizes the shmira that's required for shein and regel. Like Rabbi Elazar says, or some say that we learned in a Mishnah, there are 4 things that the Torah minimized how much protection you need to have, and they are bar, eish, shein, and regel. We already see them all. So for the bar, it says ki yiftach ish bar, if a man opens the bar, or ki yichra ish bar, or if he digs the bar v'lo yichasenu, and he didn't cover it. But if you put on a cover, any cover, that's enough. As far as fire, so it says shalim yisham ha'maveres ha'be'ira, you have to be like your maver, that you're actually fanning the flames. Until you leave it in a situation where you're literally like you're fanning it, you're not responsible. As far as shein, it says ubir b'stei acher, it has to be actually like ubir, like you're actually feeding it there, that you're bringing it there, and you're responsible for it as if you fed your animal on someone else's field. As far as regel is because the psukim say v'shilach has to be like v'shilach, that it's almost as if you sent it there itself. And now v'shilach refers to regel, as we saw in a brayso. V'shilach is regel, like it says mashalchi regel hashar v'hachamor. Beer refers to shein, because like we said, kasher yavar hagol adutumay, because we had this all the way back in the beginning of the Masechta. Says Rabbah, our Mishnah, this very one here also seems to imply that shein and regel require less of a shmira. Why? Why did our Mishnah all of a sudden switch to be talking about sheep? The entire Masechta up to now we're referring to an ox, a shar. Here we're discussing a sheep. Why did we switch? The reason must be is because the Torah minimized the shmir that's required for a shein and regel. Up to now, we're talking about Karen, where there is a real responsibility to watch it. So we spoke about an ox, which is big and strong and dangerous. But here we're discussing shein and regel, which is minimized shmira. Therefore, we decided to switch to talk about a sheep, because a sheep does only shein and regel.